Car Sales Talk 101, where it's all about life in the car business. Telling you like it is. Here's the man with the plan, Terry Cameron. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Car Sales Talk 101. I'm Terry Cameron. Thanks for hanging out with me again this week. I believe this is episode number 129. So if you're just joining us, hop on back to number 1. They were a little bit raw back then, but there still was a lot of good information in the earlier episodes. So check them out. Now, I have to answer a question. I've had several people ask me about subscribing to a podcast and why they should do that and how should they do that. Well, when you subscribe to a podcast, it changes your relationship from searching to receiving. As soon as you subscribed, you no longer have to keep track of all your favorite shows. You no longer have to go out there and search out new episodes, and you no longer have to remember what you've listened to or where you left off. So what will happen then, your podcast app will now keep track of everything related to your favorite podcast shows. New episodes will come directly to your phone automatically. Every time you open the app, they'll be waiting. Depending on your settings, they might even be downloaded already, so you're all set to listen to a few hours on the plane, entirely offline, or in my case, just a few minutes. But how do you subscribe to a podcast? Well, right now, I just want to talk about how to subscribe to a podcast in the Apple Podcast, or what used to be iTunes. So first thing you need to do is tap search inside the Apple Podcast app, which is standard, comes on your Apple phone. The next thing you do is you type the podcast name. So I want you to type Car Sales Talk. Put that into the search bar and ensure all podcast is selected. Then you're going to tap the podcast you'd like to subscribe to. Of course, that's going to be my podcast. Tap the subscribe button. That's the top center. It should be right beside the picture of me. You're now subscribed to the podcast, and you'll be alerted every time a new podcast has been, or a new episode has been released. Maybe next week or the week after, I'll talk about how to get into Spotify and log into those ways. But right now, I really would like you to subscribe to this podcast. It's what keeps me going, and it gives me reasons to keep on putting out more episodes. I'd also like you to go to the Apple Podcast platform or website or whatever you want to call it, and go ahead and give me a rating and maybe even write a review. At the end of this podcast, the young lady is going to give you my email address, and I'd like you, if you have any questions or anything you want me to address or anything you think I'm doing bad or maybe I could do better at, shoot me an email and let me know about that also. It gets tougher and tougher to come out with new content. And eventually, I'm going to probably have to start repeating myself if I haven't already done that a few times. So that'll help me out a whole bunch. And I appreciate all of the information, all of the criticism that you guys give me. So let's get started on this week's podcast. This week, I want to talk about cash. Cash is king. And when I'm talking about cash, I'm not necessarily talking about paying cash for a car or paying cash for an RV or a boat or whatever it may be. I'm talking about specifically down payment money. Cash, down payment money, is the glue that holds everything together. And it's usually skipped over more than it is asked for. And that's because we ask a stupid question whenever we sit down and we talk to our customers. But before I get to the question, I think what happens before any of the cash talk is what happens when we meet them on the lot. When we first greet them and we start asking stupid questions about financing, about paying cash, about their credit, about their payoff, who they're financed with, all of that stupid stuff, just to draw out some information for us as salespeople to decide whether or not it's worth working with this customer. And let me tell you, that will cost you sales like you would not believe. And if you're doing that, if you're brand new, if you've been doing this for years, if you are doing that, it is definitely costing you money. Of course, you're going to work a little bit harder. You're going to waste your time with some of these customers. But there's also quite a few of them that are going to turn into sales. And believe me, I do this all the time. When I start working a deal, if I listen to what the salesperson told me about that customer, I really do believe there's not much chance selling them a car. Yeah, they are upside down. But you know what? We still work it, and I can't tell you how many deals are bought. How many times the customer comes up with money? How many times the bank makes an awesome call? They see things a little bit different than we do sometimes. And who knows, it may be a credit analyst on the other end of that computer that's getting ready to quit. And this is their last day, and they want to hit that approve button every chance they get just to let their company have it. So work every deal. Don't ask those questions. But let's assume that we did everything that we're supposed to do. We greeted them properly. We got them to like us, and because they liked us, we were able to ask them some questions about how they're going to use it, who's the lucky one, who's going to be the primary driver, what's important to them, what is not important to them, so we can do that presentation based on those things that are important to them. We take them on the demo, and it's a great demo. They take total mental ownership of the vehicle. Now we come back, we point over to that spot right beside their trade-in. If you don't have a sold line dedicated already, you're going to point right at it and say, okay, guys, it sounds like we found the right car. What I'd like you to do is pull right over there to this sold line. Now, if you leave it open like that, that just means you're parking the car. But if you follow up with, because that's where I park all of my sold cars, and they pull over there, they just agreed to purchase the vehicle. It's just a matter of answering a few more questions and working out some details when we go inside and sit down. So I'm going to assume, which is a bad word, that will become a future episode, because assuming can really screw things up if you don't assume the right things at the right time. I'll save that for a later episode. But I am going to assume that we did all of this stuff. Now we're sitting down. And here's where we really mess up when it comes to down payment. And guys, let me know if you think I'm wrong. But how many times do we ask the customer, how much would you like to put down? Well, that just doesn't make any sense. The way I think, and I think I'm kind of an average person, the way I think is when somebody asks me how much I'd like to put down or how much I want to put down, that's insinuating that I don't have to put any money down. So of course I want to go that way. I want to put the least amount of money down. So the salesperson asks me, how much would you like to put down? My response will be, well, I didn't know I had an option, but since I do, let's go with 0. Boy, doesn't that make your deal tougher? It surely makes your deal tougher. Sometimes that little bit of money that you can get from that customer may put them in a different band. It may lower them down into the under 120% LTV. It may just be just enough to get the bank to say, you know what, they've got some skin in the game. Let's go ahead and give this customer a chance, or maybe another chance. So I don't want you to ask that question about how much money you want to put down. It should be more like, and sales managers, you need to make sure when you send that pencil out, whether it's a Foursquare, it's a computer generated form or whatever, there is money down, and that money down has got to make sense. Not some ballpark figure like 500, 1,000, and 1,500. How about 5%, 10%, and 15%? It's so much easier to explain that to the customer when you say, hey, my manager figured this out the way the banks like it, with either 5, 10, or 15% down. And go over the rest of the numbers and just ask them, which one of these works best for you? Now, I know most people say, I can't put $4,500 down. So what? If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. Like I say, ask for it all, take what you can get. If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. So if they can't do $4,500 down, don't be stupid and say, okay, how much would you like to put down? Because there we go with that 0 again. How about, guys, how close to the $4,500 can you get? Maybe $4,000, $3,500, somewhere from there. You know what? And there's a really good chance that they're not going to have that money either. But what you have done by now, by asking for the cash, as long as you're not afraid to ask for it and you sound like you really need it, they're going to bump themselves from that $0 or $500 down to maybe $500 to $1,500 down. You're going to get more than you would have gotten from the beginning when you asked, how much would you like to put down? And if you do that and you start with 0, you're going to have a fight on your hands because you're going to have to start bumping them on payment, and you're going to start bumping them on down payment. Now, the other thing that you can talk to them about with cash, when they say, well, I'd like to put a little bit less down, that is a perfect time to bump them on payment. So, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you understand what happens whenever your down payment goes down, right? And whether they answer it or not, you answer it, and you draw a picture of an arrow up on that worksheet or that Foursquare saying, you're right, your payments go up, so I guess you're going to be okay with a little bit higher payment. Who knows what you're going to get, but you're asking. 100% of process, 100% of the people, 100% of the time. The other thing that you can do is ask them about their tax, title, and license. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, a lot of our banks do not like to finance the tax, title, and license fees. How do you plan on paying for that? Are you going to pay for that cash, or would you like to include that in the financing? Well, they're going to tell you, for most cases, well, we'd like to include that in the financing. Okay, well, then you know that's going to have an effect on your payment. Your payment's going to be a little bit higher. So we need to expect that. Is that okay? But you know what? You might get lucky. They might say, well, no, I want to pay for my tax, title, and license separate. Guys, you just have to have enough gonads, have some to ask for the money, and don't give them that zero down payment option. If that's all they got, if that's all they have is zero, you're going to get to that anyway. But if you don't ask for all of it, you're never going to get any of it. Just try this once. Cash is king, and cash is the glue that holds that deal together and really could make the difference whether the bank buys it or not. I want you to practice this because it is so, so important. And believe it or not, most of your customers do know that they probably have to come with some cash. Try it. Have confidence in yourself. Practice it. It'll work. I promise. All right, guys. Remember, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Write that review for me. Give me a rating because I really need it. You know what I'm going to say next, right? The sky's the limit because it really is. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please rate it and write a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate your valuable feedback. You can email Terry at 10minutesalestalk@hot.rr.com. And don't forget to share the show with a friend.